Tonight, as the world quiets and the moon paints everything silver, you might feel that familiar pull toward rest. We all know that deep, universal need for a peaceful sleep, a sanctuary from the day's noise. Sometimes the best way to find that sanctuary is to be guided there by a story. This is the tale of the Whispering Willows, a gentle journey into a place where ancient trees share quiet wisdom meant to soothe your mind and welcome your dreams. By the end, you will carry a profound sense of calm, a new way to release the thoughts that keep you awake. What secret do you think the oldest trees in a forgotten valley might hold about finding true peace? This valley had a name, Serenity, and it was known for one remarkable thing. Everyone who lived there slept soundly every single night. Their rest was not a matter of chance or exhaustion, but something deeper, a quiet rhythm woven into the very soil and air. At the heart of this peaceful place was a woman named Elara. She was the village gardener, her hands forever marked with earth, her movements as steady and graceful as the passing seasons. Elara was quite old, her hair the color of silver birch bark, but her eyes held a youthful, knowing light. The people of Serenity held a quiet reverence for her, not because she gave grand speeches, but because of what she tended. Her garden was not just rows of vegetables or bright blooms, though she grew those too. It was the grove of ancient willow trees at the very edge of the village where her small stone cottage stood. These were the Whispering Willows, their long, trailing branches forming a living curtain between the tidy village lanes and the wilder woods beyond. Elara spent hours there each day, not pruning or forcing growth, but simply being present. She would touch their rough bark, listen to the soft hiss of their countless leaves, and sometimes the villagers swore they saw her smile and nod, as if in answer to a question only she could hear. They believed she understood a secret, a wisdom carried on that gentle rustling, and that this was the true source of their untroubled sleep. Yet, if you asked Elara directly, she would simply offer you a sprig of lavender and invite you to sit beneath the trees at dusk. One summer evening, the village's usual calm was broken by a small, persistent sound. It was Leo, a boy of perhaps 7 years, whose cries carried from his window. He was not hurt, but utterly consumed by a worry that felt as large as the sky. A storm was forecast for the night, and he had also misplaced his favorite wooden horse. To him, these two troubles were intertwined, a looming chaos both outside and within his own heart. His parents had tried every comfort, but the fear had rooted itself too deeply. So, as the first stars began to prick through the twilight, they brought him to the stone cottage at the edge of the grove. Elara answered the door, took one look at Leo's tear-streaked face, and simply held out her hand. Without a word, she led him into the gathering shadow of the Whispering Willows. The air beneath the trees was cooler, carrying the rich, clean scent of damp earth and willow bark. Long, silvery leaves brushed their shoulders like gentle fingers. Elara settled on a mossy root, guiding Leo to sit beside her. For a long while, they just listened to the sound of the leaves, a soft, constant sighing that seemed to slow the very beat of his heart. Finally, Elara spoke, her voice as soft as the rustling above. "You see, Leo," she said, "these old friends do not just move when the wind pushes them, they listen. And when they have heard enough, sometimes they answer. Watch this branch here." She pointed to a slender limb hanging near them. A breeze swept through the grove and all the branches swayed. "But see how this one gives," she continued. "It does not fight the wind. It accepts the push, bends with it, and then returns to its place unharmed. It holds the storm, but it does not become the storm." "That is the first whisper," she explained. "It is a lesson in letting go. Your fear of the thunder is like trying to hold that entire wind in your two small hands. You clench your fists, your body grows stiff, and all you feel is the struggle. But the willow knows a secret. By staying flexible, by allowing the wind to pass through, it remains rooted and at peace. The storm is not inside the tree, it is just something moving around it. Your worry about the lost toy is the same. You are holding the thought of it so tightly that there is no room in your mind for anything else, not even for sleep. The willow whispers that what we cling to most tightly often causes the greatest ache. Can you try, just for a moment, to loosen your grip on those thoughts? Imagine placing them on this soft moss and just listen to the trees breathe instead. Leo, sniffling, looked up at the canopy. He watched the graceful dance of the branches against the darkening blue sky. He took a shaky breath and then another, deeper one. He didn't forget the storm or his toy, but the sharp edges of his fear began to soften, blurred by the soothing, rhythmic sound all around him. He leaned against Ilara, his eyelids growing heavy. The last thing he remembered was not the forecast of thunder, but the feeling of being gently held by something vast and quiet, something that knew how to bend without ever breaking. Leo slept through the night, even as the promised storm rolled over the valley with booming thunder and silver sheets of rain. When he woke, the world was washed clean and sparkling, and his wooden horse was found safe and dry under his bed. But something else had changed within him, a quiet knowing that lingered like the scent of rain on stone. He began to visit Ilara and the grove often, not just when he was troubled, but to listen. And as he listened, he started to understand that the wisdom of the whispering willows was not spoken in any language he had learned. It was a language of sensation, a conversation woven from sound and shadow and feeling. The trees did not use words. Instead, they spoke through the texture of their rustling. A soft, collective sigh, like a long-held breath finally released, spoke of comfort and release. It was the sound of a burden being set down on soft earth. A lively, chattering dance of leaves triggered by a playful breeze carried a message of gentle joy and curiosity, an invitation to notice the small, bright moments around you. And the deep, slow, rhythmic sway, the kind that made the entire grove seem to breathe in unison, that was the voice of profound peace, a reminder of a steadiness that exists beneath all temporary worries. Learning this language was not like memorizing a dictionary. It was more like learning the moods of a dear friend. You don't need them to explain in sentences when they are sad or content. You feel it in their silence, see it in their posture, hear it in the tone of their hum. The willows communicated in exactly this way. Their whispers were insights tailored not to a general problem, but directly to the listener's own heart. A farmer fretting over a dry spell might hear the slow, deep sway and suddenly remember the deep, hidden water table beneath his fields, feeling a patient trust return. A weaver tangled in a complicated pattern might hear the lively dance and in that moment see a new way to thread her loom. The trees reflected back not an answer but a feeling, and from that feeling understanding could grow. It was a dialogue of the soul where the question was your unspoken worry, and the reply was a shift in the air, a pattern of movement that somehow, mysteriously, made everything inside you settle. Years later, the village still spoke of Anya the weaver. Her tapestries were said to hold the very colors of the valley, but her temper was as quick as her shuttle. Anya was a storm of creative energy, her mind racing 3 threads ahead of her hands. She would conceive a magnificent pattern, a scene of autumn leaves or a starry night, and she would attack the loom with a fierce determination to see it finished. Her fingers would fly, the shuttle clacking rapidly, but then a thread would snag, another would not. The beautiful image in her mind would become a frustrated, tangled mess on the loom. One afternoon, after snapping a fine linen thread for the 3rd time, she threw her hands up in despair. The more she rushed, the more the work resisted her. In a fury of agitation, she stormed out of her cottage and marched straight toward the one place everyone went when their own inner rhythm was broken, the grove of whispering willows. She stood beneath the great trees, her breath coming in short, angry puffs, and demanded an answer. How could she master her craft if the very materials conspired against her haste? For a long time, there was only the sound of her own frustration. Then she became aware of a different sound. It was not the sigh of comfort Leo had heard, nor the playful dance. This was a slow, deliberate rustling. Each movement of the branches seemed considered, purposeful. It was a deep, rhythmic sound, like the steady beat of a very large, very calm heart. She watched, and she saw that not all the leaves moved at once. The motion began at the topmost branches, a gentle stir that then traveled slowly, wave by wave, down through the canopy until it reached the very tips of the lowest trailing branches. It was a cascade of patience. The whisper was not about fixing her tapestry. It was about her relationship with time itself. Anya sat down, her anger draining away into a pool of quiet exhaustion. She watched the slow wave repeat again and again. She realized her mistake. She had been trying to force the entire tapestry into existence in a single, frantic moment. She had confused speed with progress. The willow's lesson was in the beautiful, unavoidable sequence. The tree did not try to be in bud, in leaf, and in its autumn gold all at once. It trusted the process, one season following the next, one small ring of growth added each year. Her weaving was the same. Each thread had to be placed one at a time, each intersection carefully formed. The beauty was not just in the finished image, but in the steady, rhythmic clack-clack of the shuttle, the growing pattern under her fingers, the quiet satisfaction of a single, perfectly straight line. The process itself was the art. She returned to her loom, not with a frantic energy, but with a new, deliberate calm. She focused only on the next thread, the next pass of the shuttle. The tangled threads seemed to loosen on their own. This whisper of patience holds a profound key for sleep. How often do we rush toward slumber? We lie down and immediately demand that our mind switch off, growing more tense with each passing minute that consciousness remains. We try to force the night's journey, and in our haste we push the very peace we seek further away. The willow's slow rustling teaches a different way. Sleep is not a destination to be seized, but a natural process to be allowed. It is a wave that begins at the edges of our awareness and travels inward. By patiently accepting the present moment, the feeling of the sheets, the sound of our own breath, the gentle weight of our body on the bed, we stop fighting the current of wakefulness. We let the process unfold at its own pace. In that patient surrender, without demand or hurry, sleep finds the space to quietly settle in, one peaceful breath at a time. The deepest shadows are not cast by the mountains at dusk, but by the memories we carry within. Years after Leo's childhood storm and Anya's tangled threads, a different kind of visitor came to the edge of the willow grove. His name was Kale, a former soldier who had returned to Serenity, the village of his birth. He walked with a careful stillness, his eyes scanning quiet lanes as if they were foreign territory. He had come home to peace, yet he brought a war inside him, one that raged most fiercely in the silence of the night. Sleep was not a refuge, but a treacherous landscape. In his dreams, the past replayed with a visceral intensity. The echoes of distant thunder became the roar of cannons. The rustle of a curtain transformed into the sound of approaching footsteps. He would wake with his heart pounding, drenched in a cold sweat, the peace of his quiet room feeling like a cruel mockery. His family welcomed him with love, but they moved softly around him, speaking in hushed tones, as if a loud noise might shatter him. They saw the fatigue etched into his face, the way he jumped at sudden sounds, and they quietly suggested he speak with Ilara. Kale resisted with a gruffness born of pride. What could an old woman and a bunch of trees possibly know about the things he had seen? He was a man of action, of endured hardship, not whispered secrets. But exhaustion is a relentless enemy. One evening, after a particularly vivid dream left him trembling by the hearth, he gave in. He walked to the stone cottage, not with hope, but with a weary surrender. Ilara opened the door, her silver hair catching the lamplight. She did not ask him questions. She simply looked into his eyes, nodded slowly, and gestured toward the grove. It had begun to rain, a soft, steady shower that pattered against the millions of willow leaves. "Come," she said, "the trees have a different voice in the rain." He followed, his shoulders tense, into the dim, green world beneath the canopy. The sound was immense, a symphony of gentle percussion. Each drop that landed on a broad leaf created a soft plink before rolling off the tapered tip to fall to the earth below. It was a constant, soothing rhythm of arrival and departure. "Sit," Elara said, her voice barely audible over the rain song. "Just watch." Kale sat on a wet root, expecting to feel nothing but damp and foolishness. He watched the rain. He saw how each leaf received the water openly. It did not tense or curl away. It bent slightly under the weight of the droplet, held it for a moment, glistening, and then let it go. The water traced a silver path down the leaf's vein and fell, disappearing into the soft, absorbent ground. Leaf after leaf, branch after branch, the same graceful surrender was happening all around him. "This," Elara said softly, "is the whisper of release. The tree does not deny the rain. It does not fight it or call it an enemy. It acknowledges the rain is here, it allows the rain to fall, and then it lets the rain flow away. The leaf is made lighter not by forgetting the water, but by allowing it to pass through. Your memories, Kale, they are like this rain. They have fallen on you. They are a part of your history, etched into your rings like the years in this trunk. But you have been trying to do the impossible, to hold every drop, to keep each heavy memory suspended within you, never letting it touch the ground. No leaf can hold all the rain that has ever fallen on it. It would break. The whisper is this: you can acknowledge the burden without becoming its permanent keeper. You can say, yes, this happened, I felt this fear, I carry this sorrow, and then, like the leaf, you can tip your soul just a little and let the weight of it flow away from the center of your being, down into the vast, accepting earth of the present moment. It does not mean the memory vanishes. It means you choose not to drink its poison anymore. You let it become part of the soil where something new might eventually grow. Kale sat for a long time in the rainy grove. He did not speak, but as he watched the endless, gentle cycle of receiving and releasing, he felt something inside him, a clenched fist of anguish he had carried for years, begin very slowly to unclench. He did not find forgetfulness that day. He found a way to breathe while remembering. That night, for the first time in a very long time, when the memories came, they felt less like a torrent drowning him and more like rain on a distant roof. He slept not perfectly but deeply, and he woke with a strange, quiet sensation of being a little lighter, as if some ancient, absorbed water had finally found its way to the ground. The true test of any wisdom is not in the calm but in the chaos. For years, the Whispering Willows had offered their gentle lessons in release, patience, and resilience during personal troubles. But one autumn night, the lesson became universal, and the whisper became a roar. The storm that arrived was not a forecast on a worried boy's horizon. It was a monstrous gale, born over the distant sea and hurling itself inland with a fury the valley had not seen in generations. It announced itself not with gentle rain, but with a deep, groaning wind that bent the tall pines on the ridge into fearful arcs. Then the rain came, not in drops, but in horizontal sheets that lashed against shutters and rattled roof tiles. Thunder did not boom in the distance, it cracked directly overhead, great white veins of lightning tearing the sky open and illuminating a world of frantic, dancing shadows. Inside their cottages, the villagers of Serenity huddled together. The sturdy walls that had always meant safety now seemed frail. They could hear the protest of timber, the crash of a loose shutter torn from its hinges, the terrifying howl that seemed to have a voice of its own. Their calm was shattered, replaced by a raw, shared anxiety that hung thick in the candlelit air. This was a force that asked a single, brutal question of everything in its path: how will you survive me? In the heart of this maelstrom, a single figure moved. Elara, wrapped in a heavy cloak, walked steadily from her stone cottage toward the grove. Her family pleaded with her to stay inside, but she simply touched a granddaughter's cheek and stepped out into the fury. She did not go to fight or to stop the unstoppable. She went to witness. She stood at the edge of the clearing where the willows grew. their long, graceful forms now transformed into whipping, frenzied silhouettes against the flash-lit sky. This was the dance of patience and release pushed to its absolute limit. The wind screamed through the leaves, not a sigh but a shriek. The branches did not sway, they were thrown, arcing wildly toward the ground as if to touch their own roots, then flung back upward in a violent recoil. The sound was a deafening, rushing roar, the sound of a river in the sky. Anyone watching would have feared for the trees, certain that such violence must surely snap their trunks, tear them from the earth. But Elara watched, her feet planted firmly in the sodden ground, and she saw the secret in the madness. The willows were not resisting. They were not standing rigid, trying to oppose the wind's power with their own. That would have been their end. Instead, they were yielding completely. They bent, they flowed, they gave themselves over to the force of the storm with a breathtaking flexibility. A mighty oak on the ridge, proud and unyielding, would groan and then splinter with a sound like a gunshot. The willow bent until its crown nearly touched the earth, its leaves a blur of surrendered motion, and when the winds gust past, it would swing back whole and unbroken. The lesson was no longer a gentle metaphor. It was a visceral, physical truth playing out in the tempest. True resilience is not stoic, unmoving hardness. That is fragility disguised as strength. True resilience is suppleness. It is the profound courage to bend, to give way, to move with the blow rather than meet it head-on. The willow's strength was in its willingness to be temporarily overcome, to be shaped by the storm, trusting in its deep, tangled roots to hold it fast and in its flexible core to return it to center when the fury had passed. This is the wisdom for weathering life's greatest emotional gales, especially those that rage as we try to find sleep. When anxiety, grief, or anger hits with hurricane force, our instinct is often to tense up, to fight the feeling, to build a mental wall against it. We lie in bed rigid, jaw clenched, trying to oppose the storm of our thoughts with sheer willpower. And just like the rigid oak, we risk breaking under the strain, our minds snapping into fragments of panic or despair. The willow's way, learned in the heart of the gale, offers a different path. It teaches us to allow the storm of emotion to be present, to feel the full force of the fear, the sadness, the rage, without trying to deny it or battle it. To bend with it, to let it move through us like the wind through the branches, with cries and shudders and tears if need be. We do not have to become the storm, but we can learn to let it pass through our being, trusting that our core, our rooted self, remains intact beneath the tumult. By yielding to the feeling, by giving it space instead of resistance, we drain it of its destructive power. The emotion, acknowledged and allowed, eventually expends its energy. The gust passes, and we find, like the willow slowly rising back toward the sky, that we are still here, still whole, and ready for the quiet that follows the rain. That quiet, the deep, exhausted calm after the emotional storm has spent itself, is the most fertile ground for sleep there is. The great gale became a story told by firelight, a testament to the willow's deep-rooted resilience. Years turned and the seasons cycled with their gentle predictability. Elara, who had once comforted a boy afraid of a summer storm, was now ancient. Her steps were slow, her hands more gnarled than the willow roots she loved, but the light in her eyes had only grown clearer, like a deep well reflecting a calm sky. One evening, as the autumn sun cast long, golden fingers through the grove, she asked the entire village to gather with her there. They came, young and old, filling the quiet space with a respectful silence. Among them was Leo, now a man with a calm demeanor, and Anya the weaver, her hands still but her mind peaceful, and others whose lives had been quietly shaped by the grove's whispers. Elara did not stand to give a speech. She simply sat upon her familiar mossy root, her voice a soft rustle that blended with the trees. "Friends," she began, "you have come here for comfort, for answers, for peace. And you have found it, but I must tell you a secret before I join these old friends in the earth. The wisdom was never in the trees. They are magnificent listeners, yes. They are mirrors. When you sit in their presence, your own noisy thoughts begin to settle. In that quiet, you can finally hear the voice you have carried all along, your own calm, inner voice. The willow's bend teaches you the flexibility you already possess. Its release shows you the letting go your heart already knows how to do. The trees do not give you anything new. They simply help you remember what you have forgotten in the rush and worry of the world. The act of listening to their whisper is not about hearing words on the wind. It is the act of quieting your own mind. It is creating a space inside yourself where that deeper, quieter knowing can finally speak. She looked around at the faces, young children wide-eyed, elders nodding slowly. The tradition does not live in this grove alone, she said. It lives in your attention. It lives in your pause. It lives in the quiet moment before sleep when you choose to listen to your breath instead of your fears. Teach your children to sit and be still. Teach them that the greatest answers are often found not in seeking but in settling. With that, she leaned back against the great trunk and closed her eyes, a smile touching her lips. The village sat with her in a long, comfortable silence, understanding that this was her final lesson, and perhaps her greatest. They were not losing a keeper of secrets. They were being asked to become keepers of their own quiet. In the years that followed, the stone cottage was tended, but the true tending happened in the grove. Leo, now with children of his own, would bring them there at dusk. He would not tell them what to hear. He would simply say, "Let us listen to the trees breathe and watch how they move." A small girl, worried about a lost kitten, sat beside him. She fidgeted at first, then grew still. She watched the branches give way to a breeze and return. She didn't find a solution in that moment, but she found a breath deep enough to hold her worry without being crushed by it. She had begun to learn the language. The cycle continued, not as a ritual, but as a simple human practice. The whispering willows stood as they always had, not as oracles, but as patient companions in the art of listening, reminding every generation that the quietest voice within, the one that speaks of peace and resilience, is always there, waiting for the storm of thought to pass so it can be heard. Perhaps you can feel the story settling around you now like a soft blanket. Its world does not have to stay on the other side of the page or the screen. It can be right here in the quiet of your own room. So, if you are ready, let us take the wisdom of the willows from a tale you heard to a place you can visit. Find a comfortable position, one where you can let go of holding yourself up. Allow your eyes to close gently. There is nothing you need to do right now except listen and follow the sound of my voice. We are going on a short journey, a walk to a grove of your own. First, notice the weight of your body where it rests. Feel the support beneath you, the way the chair or the bed holds you completely. With your next breath, let that feeling of being held sink in a little deeper. Now, in your mind's eye, begin to picture a path. It is not a long or difficult one. It is a simple, well-worn trail through a quiet meadow at the very end of the day. The air is cool and soft against your skin. Under your feet, the ground is not hard pavement but yielding earth covered in a carpet of moss and fallen leaves that cushion each step. You walk without hurry, without any destination except the one ahead. As you follow the gentle curve of the path, you see a soft green light ahead. You are approaching a stand of ancient trees. These are your whispering willows. Their long, graceful branches form a living archway trailing down to brush the ground, inviting you in. You step beneath the canopy and the light changes. The sun filters through a million fluttering leaves, casting dancing patterns of gold and shadow on the soft ground. The air here is still and cool, carrying the clean, damp scent of soil and bark like the forest after a gentle rain. And now, listen, hear the sound that fills this sacred space. It is a soft, constant sigh, a gentle rustling that has no beginning and no end. It is the sound of the trees breathing. Let that sound wash over you, wave after wave, softening the edges of any thought. Find a comfortable place to sit here, perhaps on a smooth, sun-warmed stone or a soft mound of moss. Lean back and feel the supportive strength of the earth beneath you. You are safe here, you are held. Now, in the kindness of this space, you might invite forward a thought or a feeling that has been resting heavily on you. It does not have to be large or dramatic. It might be a small worry from the day, a lingering tension in your shoulders, a quiet sadness, or simply the buzz of too many thoughts. Imagine placing that concern on the moss in front of you, like setting down a small, smooth stone you have been carrying in your pocket. You are not pushing it away. You are simply setting it down for a moment, giving it a place to be outside of yourself. Now look up, watch the willow leaves above you. See how they move, not with frantic energy, but with a slow, graceful purpose. A gentle breeze moves through the grove and the branches respond. They bend and sway, they give way completely, dancing with the air that moves them. They do not resist, they release. As you watch this beautiful, wordless dance, imagine that same gentle breeze moving through you. Feel it softening the space around that thought you set down. With every breath in, imagine drawing in the cool, clean air of the grove. With every breath out, imagine releasing any tightness, any holding, any resistance. Let your shoulders soften, let your jaw relax, let your forehead grow smooth. Imagine the whispering leaves absorbing the sound of your inner noise, transforming it into their peaceful, rustling song. Stay here as long as you wish. There is no clock in this grove. There is only the rhythm of the trees and your own breathing, slowly beginning to match that gentle, timeless pace. Your thought is still there on the moss, but it feels smaller now, held in a much larger, quieter piece. It is just a part of the landscape, not the whole sky. When you're ready to leave, know that this grove is always here, inside your own capacity for quiet. You can return to this feeling of rooted peace anytime you simply close your eyes, take a deep breath, and listen for the whisper beneath the noise of the world. The whispers of the willow are simple, yet they echo through a lifetime. They teach us to let go of what we cannot control, to move with patience rather than force, to release the burdens we were never meant to carry forever, and to find our strength in flexibility, not in rigid resistance. These are not just ideas for a story, they are gentle instructions for the soul, especially as night falls. Sleep, like wisdom, is a shy guest. It rarely comes when we chase it, when we demand its presence with clenched fists and a frantic mind. It arrives instead when we stop trying so hard, when we simply create a peaceful, open space within ourselves and allow it to settle in its own time. By listening to the whispers, we learn to become that space, a quiet grove where the storms of the day can finally pass through and leave behind a deep, star-filled calm. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you tonight. From my heart to yours, I wish you a restful and profoundly deep sleep. May you carry the feeling of the whispering willows with you into your dreams. And if you feel moved to, I would love to hear what helps you find your own peace at night. Please share your thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Good night.